today. So this text is really interesting to read when you're in, Nebraska, Iowa, when you have, we're not right in a rural place here in Omaha, but we do have links. And it's so wonderful to think about the land, the soil that is all around us. So first I'm going to start with something Joy Sereno sent to me, and she said, this will put you to sleep. But it came up in our Bible study, and I just love it. So it's the National Commodity Crop Productivity Index. So let's see, it's the National NCCPI. So it's a national survey of all the soil in the U.S., and it has these gradations of what the soil is and how cultivatable it is. So I know you can't see this, but I just think it's humorous. This is just one snip of Douglas County. All the different soils just in Douglas County. I mean, can I even read it from here? Tectonic scroll complex occasionally flooded. Look at that. Gibbon, Kenton, Kennebrick, Coleridge, Saltine. Oh my goodness, all these different kinds of soil just in Douglas County. And then the far right column is the crop index. Whether or not that soil is very good for seeds. So, once you go down this rabbit hole, it gets more fascinating. I just really got curious about this. It is so much fun. And I grew up in rural Iowa, so I had to look at this. There was another map. I mean, really, this is a fun rabbit hole. So let's look at the map there that kind of shows kind of Iowa, Nebraska. What the land, and of course Iowa's all about corn. There's like a corn index. How much corn can you grow? So this was kind of a fun thing. I mean, that just looks like green, but there's gradations of green. Look closer, you can see Omaha there on that black border between Nebraska and Iowa. But it's a lot of green going on there. And I was going to show off. I'm from northeast Iowa, and I was like, look how green it is. I had to look up my county. It was particularly green. And Grundy County looked like the greenest of the green, which is 2 counties over from where I grew up. So I think it's it's pretty fascinating. When I met Peyton, who's part of our discovery here, I knew he studied soils, and I'm sure he's used to telling people that, and then their eyes kind of glaze over, and what's the next topic? But now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. And he literally checked out different soil samples from around the church. So and then he told me that he doesn't do the NCCPI index, but it's adjacent to that, and his office takes a look at soil nutrients and pH, and then whether a soil is clay, silt, or salty, saline, I think is the other one. I don't know. I'm looking at Kaylee. So anyway, I mean, you can really go down a rabbit hole with this one. And then I think it's rather humorous because for a few years, Madeline's been telling me about where the current Discovery Garden is. What's the problem, Madeline, with the current Discovery Garden? It's very rocky. So there you go. It's a thing. It's a thing. So when I was down this rabbit hole, it's really interesting. I was reading, probably some Iowa State University professor was talking about soil and making a pitch for people, what's good soil. And one of the PowerPoints in talking about soil was good soil equals good yield. Isn't that great? Good soil equals good yield. I mean, was this professor reading Mark 4 or what? Good soil, good yield, or should Jesus be hired by the NCCPI? It's just, it is a thing, soil. and the quality of soil and what can come from different soils. So, of course, the point of this story in the Bible isn't just for agrarian use, although it's so wonderful. The Bible is full of, whether old or new, agrarian stories. Just the land, the produce, life in the more rural place. And from that, Jesus tells stories, special teaching stories, that are called parables. So we're in the parable section of the Gospel of Mark. And Mark, Matthew, and Luke all have a chapter devoted to parable. And there are other parable-like stories in other parts of the Gospels, and even the Old Testament as well. So here we are in the land of parable. Parable takes ordinary, familiar things in people's lives and uses them to point to something else by way of illustration or teaching. So what is going on in this parable of the sower? So it's kind of easy at first to chart this parable, okay? So I've got a little chart that can maybe help us take a quick look at this parable. So there's a sower, and the sower sows seed. So there's 4 different kinds of soil. There's the path, there's the rocks, there's the thorns, and then there is the good soil. And then with each soil, things happen. First soil, the birds come along and eat. Second soil, with the rocks, the sun scorches the ground. The seed doesn't have a root system to help it grow, so it withers. And then our favorite, thorns, right? Thorns come up and choke out the growth of the plants. And then finally, good soil. And in this good soil, the seeds don't just sprout, they don't just form, the roots sprout, they grow and grow and grow. And they don't just grow, they grow to just extreme abundance. So the text kind of lays that out. And then from that teaching parable, Jesus kind of breaks out and talks about parables in general. Do you get parables? Do you understand parables, people? I'm going to use parables. So Jesus talks a little bit more in general about parables. Then Jesus pivots back, and he walks through the story again, and he provides interpretation. So the spin here is that the path where the birds are eating up the seed right away. Okay, well, first of all, the seed is the word of God, God's good word. So let's see, the seeds get scattered, the birds eating. It's kind of goes dark here. Satan comes in and just scoops up. It's a hard soil. Satan's able to come in and gobble up the word before it has any hope of proceeding further. And the second scenario, the interpretation provided in Mark, is that the sun scorching and the rocks, these are circumstances that happen, troubles, persecution, and that prevents the growth of the word. Because these soils are humans. Soils are humans. So imagine these humans going through things. So the third one, where the thorns are choking out the growth, it says that these humans are getting distracted, and it literally says by wealth or by things. They're getting off that growth path, that work with that word, by getting sucked in to other pursuits. And I just labeled that as values. So it's like, are you going to nourish that seed, that root, or, are you going to get distracted and sucked in to something else of less value? And then it's very interesting in our translation for the fourth soil that the good soil accepts, I love that word, accepts the seed. And then from that acceptance, the seed grows and flourishes, and it's just incredibly abundant. So So you can't just leave the story there, you know. I'm sure, I missed the Friday Bible study, but I'm sure there was a lively discussion. What does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? So, you know, another level of interpretation. So, you know, one thing to throw out there that came up on Wednesday was, you know, is this just time progression for people to understand something? Yeah, that's kind of not a, you know, a bad way to look at this. Another interpretation to throw out there, for me, it's I was sobered by the reality of something we don't talk a lot about as Presbyterians, the reality of evil or Satan, the reality of that. And I think sometimes as church people, we can be kind of judgmental. Oh, some people get it, some people don't. And then we use that as a wedge and we become judgmental. And that just doesn't feel like grace that we experience here at our church. So digging into that, digging. It's the day to make soil jokes, by the way. Have at it. I just thought, is it a call to compassion? You know, certain circumstances, there is evil. And because of the reality of evil, you know, good things can't take root. It's just circumstances. And that's a reality. Maybe in some families, some societies, even some countries. You know, it is what it is. Evil scoops up what is good. So it gave me some compassion to think about. That's a reality. The second scenario, too, brought compassion. You know, sometimes people, because of circumstances, troubles, pains, again, life, terrible things, the goodness just can't take root. It is what it is. Maybe that tamps down judgment. Because this parable has sort of to me, a modern quality to it, or maybe it's timeless. I think sometimes we worry, you know, why do some people get it? Why do other people not get faith if we have experienced faith? And we might even, in our times right now, oh my gosh, faith is taking a beating in our culture. You know, people have just not embraced faith or going to church and things like that. And that can be kind of depressing or head scratching. And maybe this parable just says, you know, it is what it is. There's evil, there's circumstances, there's trends. It is what it is. So, you know, calm down. Just calm down. It is what it is. This is reality. And I was thinking for Jesus' time too. Of course, Jesus lived his life, and then later the Gospels were written. So for the writer of Mark, he might have been trying to explain it to that first group of people who understood Jesus and enjoyed the grace of God and comprehended goodness. And for them, the light bulb went on, and oh my gosh, this is it. But then their family members or other religious authorities, you know, the Roman Empire didn't get it. And maybe this helped them understand and sort out, why is it? Why is it? Sorting, you know, people get it, people don't get it. People show up, people fall away. The third place where I labeled it as values, I thought this is a place, whether it was back then or now, maybe the church can have a little traction talking about values. And what are values? Well, biblical values, and then in particular the values that Jesus talks about in this parable. And the values that Jesus lifts up are the pursuit of money or the pursuit of things. Sometimes we classify that as worldliness, the ladder, attention, ego. It's a thing. And when you're given the choice of the humble way of Jesus Christ, which we're going to study a lot more of across Lent with several other stories, you know, there's that path, so to speak, or the path of, oh, what makes me popular? What gets me attention? What makes my ego feel better? What makes me comfortable? And then, just more money, better this, better that, quote unquote success. And I think sometimes tacitly we as church people agree with it. We enable it. Like, okay, understandable. People want, to live that life. And Jesus, as we'll see in another story shortly, not so with you. Not so with you. But that kind of pursuit can get us sucked into another way of life. And it's very hard to say, actually, that's not the way that the Gospels lift up. So I think it's something we can tap into, talk about more openly here. And then, again, it's just another interpretation for me of this parable is like, oh my gosh, 3 different lanes of like depressing, but then finally you get to that 4th lane, and not only does it work, it is abundance. It is huge, 30, 60, 100-fold abundance. So it kind of counteracts things for the humble faith worker who's like, where is everybody? What's going on? Oh my gosh. It says, good soil is good soil. It'll be okay. Chill out. For me, this text is kind of a way to look at why is it that there is a range of acceptance of goodness? Why is it there is a range of acceptance of goodness? Like, duh, goodness is goodness, just accept it. But not so. It is not a thing. Maya Angelou has a quote. She says that goodness, grace, which we talk a lot about here, grace is a drinkable lake that is right outside your door. But you stay inside and refuse to drink. Grace is a drinkable lake right outside your door, and you stay inside and refuse to drink. To me, that kind of sums up our Cup of Life Lent theme. There is a lake of grace all around us all the time. Why aren't we drinking? This is good drinking. Why aren't we drinking? That theory about, are these soils? Is it timing? I was thinking about for myself, those different soils, the path, the hard path, the rocky path, area, the thorns, the good soil, that's me. And it's not me across my life. It's me in 1 hour last week. It's me in 15 minutes. I can be 4 different soils. So this parable maybe gives me compassion for myself. Sometimes it's the hard path. Sometimes, there is evil, and sometimes there are circumstances that where me or others just grind us down. There's trolls, there's so much negativity. Oh, it's overwhelming. And sometimes you can have a good start and it just, dang, one thing happens and it's choked out. So, have a little compassion, whether it's for yourself or for others. That soil. The place where we're going this Lent, though, is going to kind of defy this parable or take it to another level. This Lent, we dare to say that we can become better soil. We can become better soil. We can become enriched. This is our Lent invitation to everybody. This is kind of what's in that brochure. We invite you to take a brochure, our Cup of Life brochure. It's available here. You can take cups, more than one cup if you want one. But there is a prayer on the back of the brochure. And there's lots of different things to look at. You can see what part speaks to you. But on the back page of it is a prayer. It says, "The Cup of Life Prayerful Affirmation." And the words of this prayerful affirmation might help you think about the learning, the turning, the accepting of grace. So the process in the Bible, it's so fascinating, whether it's the Old Testament or New Testament. It's all over the place. And Jesus today, in that middle section of the parable, and much more so, and we've discovered in Matthew's gospel, Jesus says, this perception, it's this tricky thing. It's simple, hard perception. Seeing, hearing, perceiving. Step one is perceiving that there is this realm beyond our realm. And perceiving of that, step one, leads to turning to that realm. Perceive, turn, and then 3, perceive, turn, receive. Accept grace, which changes everything. So here it is in this parable. It's in every single gospel. The book of Acts ends with that progress of just turning and receiving grace, and it changes everything. We experience the peace of God. So I invite you into Lent today. I invite you into some kind of practice that makes you more aware of God's grace operating in your life, that you might be more active in receiving, cooperating with it, processing hard things that maybe prevent rocks and other stuff that might be preventing you. But I invite you to believe that you are cultivatable. Things can change. To God be the glory. Amen.